G'day, mate. 40 here with a fellow Aussie, dear Beltran, and you can pretty much sum up Dia's political philosophy, I believe, with two words: Australia first. Is that fair, Dia?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. And so you recently released a doco. It's Perspective on Race Today, a video essay. So what led you to make this documentary?
Originally, it was just that I wanted to interview Gypsy Crusader. I found him really interesting. I found his story really interesting, and he was getting so much traction. I was only speaking to him at 6,000 when he had like 6,000 followers, but he's very quickly developed in that 4 to 5 month period that I ended up making the video essay. He's gone up to 32,000, and I've had unfortunate dealings in the past with the far right Australians, and I don't want anything to do with them. And so I thought at the time, I can't all of a sudden step into or put my toe into the far right of America. That's irresponsible. But then I thought if it was a controlled environment, and I also interviewed Black people and a Jewish person, that it would be a far better idea, because it'd be a level playing field and it'd give everyone a chance in that type of discussion to either prove or disprove the stereotypes that occur in that racial divide. And so that's what I did, and it ended up becoming a documentary, and a lot of people love it. I'm quite proud of myself.
And tell me about some of the other people that you have on the documentary, and how did you come to choose them?
Okay, so the two Black fellows, one of them is my friend. I've been friends with him. He's the last one that shows in the documentary. His name is Jimothy. And so I've been friends with him for over a year and a half. He's proven to be a loyal, kind friend. I value loyalty and kindness. And the other fellow was his friend, because I emailed, without exaggerating, about 40 different Black people. Some who are of note, some who are not as well known, all of them Black nationalist types, Black Israelite types, all that kind of thing. Not a single one of them got back to me. 4 got back to me in that 40 that I emailed. I couldn't find anyone, and I was telling my friend Jimothy, my goodness, I feel like the white racists are at least loud and proud about their racism, that they're not afraid to say it. These Black people are not getting back to me. I don't know if it's because I'm not, particularly well known. I'm not really sure what's going on, but it's bothering me, and they're not getting back to me. And he goes, "Oh, I have a friend. My friend, he's he's pro-Black. He's not a Black nationalist or anything like that, but he might be right." And I'm like, okay. And so I got him, and that ended up being a great discussion, one of my favorites. And then the Jewish fellow I came to know, Duvid, through the other far right, the nihilistic racist on that program, on that production that I did. His name is Reviler. I mean, that's his online name. His real name is a mystery. But so Reviler said, there's a guy named Duvid. He does the rounds with different white nationalists. You'd get him on. And I'm like, okay. And I asked him, and he said yes. And so he was easy to get. The white nationalists were easy to get. My Black friend was easy to get. But yeah, I could not for the life of me get a pro-Black individual on my show. It took about 2 months to get that.
Yeah, I read a book on stereotypes that was published in 1982, and it said that the one group in America about which there's virtually no positive stereotypes are Blacks.
Oh, well, that's not a good thing. I didn't know that. I don't know the book of which you speak, but there are great stereotypes of Black people, I would think. Like people, people say white men can't jump because Black people are so good at sports and stuff like that. So I wouldn't class Black people in negative categories. Like, everyone has their good categories and their bad categories. Every single group has that. But in terms of patterns of behavior, my documentary certainly delves into Black crime.
Now, what would you say the positive stereotypes about Blacks or Aborigines in Australia?
Oh, well, I didn't really touch on them at all. They weren't even in my documentary. But the positive stereotypes, I suppose, the art, the dot painting crap, the dot painting stuff, their music, their playing of the didgeridoo, that's all kind of cool.
Yeah, I've culturally appropriated, so I even have a didgeridoo here. So it's a regular
Well,
part of my stream.
well, I mean, there is the argument that a lot of what the Aboriginals, what a lot of what we believe to be Aboriginal culture today is actually originally a white invention that's been propagated as Aboriginal. So I don't know how true that is, but I think every conspiracy theory is worth looking into. Are you going to grab your didgeridoo? Is that why you just left the camera?
Is that bad?
You know, I don't care. I want to see the didgeridoo. Let me look at it. I don't think you're doing a very good job there.
Oh, you really hurt my feelings there. I mean, a lot of people thought I'm a very accomplished didgeridoo player. I'll have you know that I'm about as good with the didgeridoo as I am with the cricket bat.
That's funny.
Equally talented. So I grew up in Australia. Nine of my first 11 years were in Australia, and I didn't have any Aborigine friends. I didn't know any Aborigines. The only Aborigines I ever saw were passed out drunk in the gutter.
I don't know why we're talking about this, my goodness, but look, I will say that I lived most of my life in Melbourne, Australia, and I had never run into an Indigenous Australian until like I was 12, 13 maybe, yeah, so it wasn't a common thing to see them, at least not in the city, at least not in Victoria.
Yeah. And would you describe Melbourne as a multicultural city?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm half Spanish, half Colombian. I'm adding to that stat. The difference is that my mum and dad, you know, they're not Australian. I'm technically not Australian by the logic of a white nationalist, but I will say I'm a first generation Australian. That label I can use because I'm here as a first generation. I'm not technically Australian by, you know, like if I move to Sudan, my children aren't suddenly Sudanese because they're born there and they're first generation, but I'm a first generation Australian. Yes, Australia, Melbourne in particular is very multicultural, but we speak perfect, like my accent, doesn't it sound Australian? Like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and my Spanish is fluent. But yeah, look, we're not lending to the problem of overpopulation. We're not lending to the problem of whereas maybe certain demographics in Australia are like, definitely the Chinese is one that I could say out loud without feeling like I'm being controversial because it's just true. Like, so yeah, like if you're going to move to another country, you make sure that you speak the language and that you assimilate correctly. And my family's done that.
And is there a large Latino community in Melbourne?
No, there are Latinos, trust me. And my auntie used to hold these big barbecues and these big parties, and so I've grown up around Latino people my whole life. But no, it's not like Texas or Miami.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm from Australia. I've been back to Aussie many times since I left. I don't recall ever running into a Latino Australian.
Nah, we're a, what's the word? Commodity.
Yeah. Yeah. And what brought your parents to move to Australia?
I don't know. My dad left Spain at 18. My mother left. My mother's sister and her husband, my uncle, were living in Australia already. My dad met them first. And then through a friendship, he started being a pen pal to my mother, my auntie's sister. And then he paid for her to come to Australia to hang out with her sister and to meet my mum. Then they got married. And I'm the middle of 3 kids. Like, it's just, yeah.
And what are your favorite things about living in Australia?
Well, I've been all over the world. I've traveled all over the world, and Australia really is one of the best countries on earth. Something I might have failed to have acknowledged in my younger years. I was definitely a little bit left-leaning. I mean, I've never been left-leaning ever, but like sometimes you have left-leaning thoughts despite being we're all layered, right? So I was very left leaning in the one thought that I was like, oh, white people are a problem, white people are bad, Australia's not that great. I don't know why I thought that, but I did for many years. But it's so not true. Like, Australia is an amazing country. I'm so blessed to be here, and I realize that now in my 30s how fantastic this country truly is. But yeah, I've traveled the world. There are many great countries, but if I had a choice between Colombia or Australia, I'm going to choose Australia. Like we have profound opportunities here, far more than my family does in Colombia, you know. And Spain is great. I love Spain, but right now it's under socialist rule, and the whole coronavirus stuff is ruining the country, kind of like it is here. But I still feel like Australia has a chance. Europe is gone.
Yeah. And when did you start to develop your nationalist philosophy?
Probably 3.5 years ago. 3.5 years to 4 years ago. What the hell are you doing? Just sorry, it's so delayed, but like I just noticed that you're wearing a cork hat.
Well, there are a lot of flies here, so I'm just trying to keep the flies off.
Completely fair.
Yeah, here in LA, I mean it's brutal out there. I don't leave the house without my cricket bat and without my hat to keep the flies away. Yeah, and I got my my Aussie shorts, you know, the really short shorts. And
budgie smugglers.
yeah. But then I wear a dress shirt on top of that because I got to be professional. So it's like I'm professional above the waist. It's like I'm Beverly Hills above the waist, but I'm Watts and Compton below the waist.
Yeah.
Like I'm Beverly Hills in the streets, and I'm Watts in the synagogue.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Sounds wild.
What led you to developing an Australia First nationalist philosophy? There must have been either some events or some friends or some books or something.
Oh, okay. Well, during a little bit before 2016, pretty much all of my life leading up until I started political commentary, but I had started noticing that the media was dishonest or gewollt. And it was with George Bush that I first noticed it. He was in office, and David Letterman always like pummeled him. And then suddenly Barack Obama is president, and David Letterman never makes a joke about him. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. You just notice these things. And then it happens again. President Trump is president, and he's mocked again. And I'm like, there's something happening against Republicans here. There's something happening against Christians. There's something happening. And at this stage, YouTube is all about Christians versus atheists. That was sort of the majority of YouTube culture. And then I see a shift. Suddenly, atheists and Christians are doing videos together against the left and against XJWs. And I'm like, this is another shift. And you keep noticing these things, and then, you know, you want to join the conversation because you feel like you have something to say. And so I joined the conversation. And then within that time, I slowly started realizing, because unlike a lot of political pundits who are so knowledgeable and know so much, I don't put myself in that category. I feel like I learn along the way. And so people are watching me actually evolve. I went from becoming super pro-Israel, super pro-Israel, Jewish people never do anything wrong, to realizing that these people do wrongs as well. I can't just assume that every group is perfect. And then I was like, okay, so I'm Australia first, and we shouldn't be giving any money away to anyone. We are Australia first. And so then I became far more neutral on the Israel topic, you know, still believing that they deserve their own homestead and all that kind of stuff, but being like, okay, Australia first, stop giving your money to Palestine, stop giving your money to, and let's focus on the Australians that we have here. And then, yeah, I think you're right. Some friends influenced that, friends that I no longer associate with now who are not good people. But that doesn't mean that all of their realizations and epiphanies politically were inaccurate just because we don't associate with each other anymore. And so, yeah, there's a little bit of that as well. But mostly I came to these things on my own. Like, if you're going to be America first, Australia first, whatever first, you need to believe that wholeheartedly. Like you're Australian, but you live in America. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
where are you on that? Are you Australia first or America first?
I'm America first because I live in America. So I think
exactly.
that
See, no, but I get that. That's fine.
Yeah.
Like I'm not Colombia first. I'm not Spain first. I'm Australia first.
Yeah, I'm not Israel first. I've got a special affection for the Jewish state, but I don't live there. I live in America. I've lived I've lived about 40 of my 54 years in the United States of America, in California.
Exactly. I get it. Oh my gosh, you're in California? You're allowed to just get HIV there.
Well, I'm trying to stay away from the gay bathhouses. I'm trying to cut way back on that.
Fair.
Yeah, by the grace of God. I've been able to stay away from the HIV, and I keep a good strong cricket bat. Whenever some bloke tries to give me the HIV, I just give him a bit of a tap with a cricket bat, and it tends to discourage them.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, you gotta watch out. I was raised a Seventh-day Adventist, so
I know you told me this. You told me you were a Seventh-day Adventist.
So we were raised to not drink, to not smoke, and to not lend our bums to other blokes. And so even though I've converted to Orthodox Judaism, I still don't.
You're a Jew now.
Yeah, but I still don't drink, I still don't smoke, and I still don't lend my bum to other blokes. So I'm kind of carried on.
A lot of the Jewish and Christian morals do intertwine.
Yeah. Like I don't like to swear. Like I very rarely swear because as a preacher's kid,
I swear, but I rarely swear. I like that you do the same. Sorry, keep going. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no, it's just that I like much of the kind of Puritan way I was raised. I mean, the Seventh-day Adventists are kind of an offshoot of the Puritans. They're a direct offshoot of the Methodists, but it's a very morally strict religion, and it was a good way to be raised. Now, I went pretty wild for a while.
You went atheist, didn't you? Is that what you said in our emails?
I went atheist for about 4 years, but then even when I was coming back to God, I was playing the field with the Sheilas, and I read about the porn industry for a while. So, like, I've never indulged in drugs or alcohol or many of the other vices. But
really? I've totally indulged in alcohol, never drugs.
Yeah. Well,
you didn't ever indulge in drugs?
No, never.
I mean alcohol. Sorry, I meant alcohol.
No. I mean,
wow, well done.
Had a sum total of probably 10 glasses of wine in my life. So, a mouthful here and a mouthful there, just to be polite.
Okay.
But I got an addictive personality, so I tend to do whatever I'm doing to an extreme. So
fair enough.
I just wanted to make sure that I never developed a taste for the alcohol. So.
But you said that. So wait, you said you were with the Sheilas, meaning you were having lots of sex with lots of different women until you came to your senses?
Yeah.
And stopped doing that?
Yeah, well, basically what happened.
I've never led a promiscuous lifestyle. I'm like, I can count them all on one hand.
Yeah, no, that's great, because what happened for me was, like, the first one was so special. Like, there was like a bond that
nice.
I would feel for the that I anticipated feeling for the rest of my life. But then I got really religious, so I completely quit that. And then about 5 years later, I got weak and I had my second, and then I was just off to the races. It's
Fair enough.
Like when you're just with one, it's special. But for me, once I had the second, then it's like, oh, I want 50 more of these. Like, this is so amazing.
Is your number higher than 100?
No. I mean,
under 50?
Yeah. Under 50. Yeah, so I'm around 40. So I was not some major player.
No,
but,
I mean, it's more than I've ever done.
Yeah, it's a little more than average, but
yeah,
it's not a huge number. But the problem was, like, how much time I'd spend thinking about it. Like,
oh really?
Yeah, or it just kind of warped my whole life, because I realized there was nothing I liked more than Sheila's.
Okay.
And so because of that, then I never really, got it together, because I was always, obsessing about my latest Sheila. And
fair enough.
And then finally had to go to a 12-step program to kind of get my sex addiction under control.
Oh,
So
fair enough.
yeah, that happened about 2011. But
Oh, wow. Not horribly
yeah,
long ago.
yeah. So it happened 9 years ago, and then I finally got into 5 different 12-step programs dealing with various emotional addictions. And so it's really probably only the last 3 years that I feel like I've started to get my life together.
Oh, well, congratulations. I'm really happy. And is the Orthodox Judaism that you've stepped into, do you believe that's a part of it? Because I would say, I personally would say that no one can really have fulfillment in life without Jesus Christ, but your newfound faith does not have that.
Well, that's correct. It does not have Jesus. What
Mm.
I was frightened by myself in my 20s when I was an atheist.
You
I
scared
can't,
yourself? Wow. Yeah,
yeah,
that's what atheism does. It causes a sense of hopelessness, I think.
yeah. I had an utter
Mm.
sense of hopelessness because I could kind of play things out in my head, and I saw
Mm.
that I'd be willing to give up absolutely everything for sex, and I saw that this would just totally lead to my destruction. So I was looking for a way for an alternative, and so I
To
heard
have your
some.
cake and eat it too?
No, I needed a way
No.
of life that worked. And so
Okay.
I'd never met Jews. And then I got to UCLA at about age 21, 22. And I started listening to a Jewish talk show host. And so this is my first interaction with people who identify as Jewish. And so it was kind of cool to me because it was a way to God that wasn't Jesus. Because I'd been raised with Jesus. And so I needed something new. But I needed something that would keep me under control because I saw how
Well, why not Islam?
self-destructive Islam
If
didn't.
that's all you, it sounds to me like all you needed was strictness. It doesn't sound like Judaism really was something that spiritually enlightened you. It just sounds like you were looking for something like a military school, and you just chose Judaism. That's what it kind of sounds like to me. It doesn't sound like it was calling to you.
Right. So, however,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah, I
Yeah.
know exactly what you mean. But the
Yeah.
thing is, however I describe the experience, it's
Mm-hmm.
probably not going to be accurate. Like
Oh.
I could tell you, oh, I did it for the morals. I needed stricter morals. Or I could tell you, oh, I did it because I needed a way to God, but that was different from my parents' way to God. But, however I articulate it, you know, maybe not even I fully understood what happened. Like we can explain things. I don't know if you've made any dramatic shifts in your life, and you can articulate them, and you can rationalize them, and you can present them to the world. But what was going on inside of you was probably a lot messier than the story that you tell.
Oh, of
So
course. Like if anyone lived inside my mind, they would be anxious all the time because it just doesn't stop. I worry about things that I shouldn't worry about, and things I should worry about, I don't worry about. Prime example, when I was in New South Wales, because I'm staying in my parents' house right now in Victoria, but I've been living in New South Wales for the last year, just because the laws there are better, and I have friends up there, and I find Victoria to be quite toxic. But anyway, I was on my way to work, and I was driving up, and I thought, I passed, because I'm an idiot, I got distracted with a YouTube video, and then I passed the location that I needed to. So to turn around, I did a U-turn, and I didn't judge the right amount of road, and then my car tipped, and it's just stayed on that side of the road. You know how the country roads are,
yeah,
and that like anyway, my car tipped, so I got out of my car. And I'm like, well, I have to get to work. So I just started walking to the house that I had to get to. And then this guy pulls up and he goes, what are you doing? And I said, I have to go to work. He goes, but you've just left your car there. I said, yeah. I said, I can't do anything right now. I said, I have to go to work. And then he goes, oh. And then he yanks me out and all of that stuff. Hilarious. That is something I didn't even think to concern myself with, that I had left my car there. It was tipped on the side of the road, whatever. But then if I see a photo of someone who is a former acquaintance who is, saying something, or someone has informed me of something they've said, I'll freak out about that. I'll be like, what are they going to say to this person about me? Like, do you know what I mean? Things
yeah.
that make no sense, that I can't control. So I get what you're saying. You're saying that there's no way I can judge what you're saying regarding your
Conversion.
introduction to Judaism, but I don't know the specifics of what was happening in your brain and how crazy you were at the time. If all the chaos that's going on in there, all the chaos that goes on in here. So yeah, I can only judge it on a superficial level, because that's all I get when I hear the story, the superficial elements of it.
Yeah, and I can't even tell it to you accurately because
You might not, yeah.
even I don't fully understand what happened. Like,
Fair enough.
but I mean, if I do try to tell it to you, I'm going to try to tell it to you a lot cleaner and, impressive sounding than it actually was. I'm not gonna tell my story like, I'm some, jerk. I'm gonna try to. I can't help but try to make it more impressive. But it was, it was, it was a desperate cry. It was desperation because I was also got very sick. So I was very sick for
Well,
about 6 years.
I'm sorry to hear that. You don't come off to me as someone who is an idiot. I feel like you are a well-researched individual. So, can I ask what type of Judaism you follow? Because there is Torah Tanakh, which I think is great, and then there's Talmud, which I find dubious. Like, which of those books are you?
Right.
Do
So
you?
I'm
Do
an
you
Orthodox Jew. So the Talmud has far more to do with how we live our lives than the Torah and the Tanakh.
Are you comfortable with everything the Talmud states?
Oh no, I mean, of
Oh,
course
you're
not.
not. Okay, good. Okay, good. All right, just thought I'd
But
ask.
I mean, I'm not comfortable with everything that the Tanakh says, where God, I mean, Deuteronomy 7,
Well, that's.
God
Oh
God
yeah, of
tells
course, it's rough.
God tells the Israelites go in there and slaughter everybody. Like God keeps telling the Israelites through
But you know
Moses
why that is,
to
don't
commit.
you?
Well, hang on, let me just finish the point, and then you can respond. God keeps telling the Israelites through Moses to commit mass genocide. So I'm not particularly comfortable with that. And in the flood story, God wipes out virtually everybody on earth. So I'm not particularly thrilled with that either. So go ahead, you have a
No,
point.
I agree. I agree with what you're saying. I don't disagree with anything that you just said. But I was just going to say that the reason why that is that people don't realize is that those were not human people. They were hybrid beings. They were not. They were not originally created by God. They had been. That's called. There's the Antidiluvian era, and then there's the post-Diluvian era. That's for those who don't know what I'm saying. That's pre-flood civilization, post-flood civilization. Giants, non-giants, and so all of that occurred. All of that occurred because the fallen angels had been mixing animals with humans and all these horrible, disgusting things that were forbidden by God. And so when people say they killed other people, it sounds horrible. But then when you read between the lines and you have the context of Genesis chapter 6, that the sons of man came to earth and they mixed. So what they were killing was actually abominable creatures that weren't supposed to exist in the first place. That's all.
Yes. Yeah, that's that's one explanation for what sounds absolutely horrifying. So we can there are explanations that you can use for everything that's uncomfortable and horrifying in the Bible, and you can also do the same thing for the Talmud. But in the plain reading of the text, like a normal, honest person is going to be horrified by a lot of what's said in the Bible and a lot of what's
as they should.
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I mean, as they should.
It's so yeah. I went to something called Daf Yomi, which means a page of Talmud. So I spent about 5 years of my life every morning studying a page of Talmud. So I've got a familiarity with all the tractates in the Gemara, the Talmud. So before there was a Bible, there was an oral tradition, and the oral tradition got written down in the form of the Pentateuch and then the other books of the Hebrew Bible. And then alongside that, those books was another oral tradition that was written down in the Talmud. So I know from your perspective and from the perspective of secular scholars, the Talmud came much later. But from the traditional...
Yes, and it's...
Go ahead.
Go.
Oh, yeah,
no, I keep interrupting you. Please keep going.
Okay, so from the perspective of disinterested secular scholarship, and from your perspective as well, the Talmud came much later. And the Talmud really developed approximately 2,000 years ago. Now, from the traditional Orthodox Jewish perspective, which is not based on secular scholarship, it's based on faith, that the oral tradition was given to Moses at Mount Sinai by God, along with the written Torah. So there was an oral Torah and a written Torah, and the oral Torah was carried on orally down through the generations. So the traditional Jewish perspective is that the substance of the Talmud, the oral Torah, was given by God to Moses at Mount Sinai 3,200 years ago. Now, no modern secular scholar would say that there's any truth to that. They would say that the oral tradition is approximately 2,000 plus years old, but there's no evidence that there was this whole corporate oral tradition given 3,200 years ago. So there's always a big difference between faith statements and what secular disinterested scholarship tells you.
Completely fair. What my issue is with the Talmud is that well, obviously as a Christian I would have a problem with it, but outside of that, it's not really influenced by other Jews. It's Pharisaic. It's completely Pharisaic in nature, and so everything from the Talmud to today, or however long the Talmud went for, I don't know, like when it stopped, it's all Pharisaic influence. And so what they say about my Savior, what they say about Mother Mary, and I'm not even a Catholic, I don't really care about Mary, but like what they say is completely what's the word? Vile?
Horrible. Yeah, vile.
Horrible. Yeah, it's just it's not accurate. And so when you look at a book like the Torah and the Tanakh, you're like, okay, this is clearly influenced by God. And then you read the Talmud, the language changes, the tone changes, the aggression towards the Messiah, who is preached in the book of Isaiah. The book of Isaiah predicts his coming, but then he comes and they reject him. And so rather than acknowledge that they were wrong, it's like they purposely lied and said, oh, no, that's not actually what happened. And then, and it's like the people of today who choose that faith, such as yourself, are going along with a false narrative of something that 500 people attested to. They saw him ascend into heaven. So that's where my difficulty with it comes in. It's my same difficulty with Islam. It's like all of a sudden this prophet says that his book is the last book, this Quran thing is the last book. So that means that space between the time that Jesus Christ ascended into heaven and Muhammad exists, in that 600-year time gap, people believed that Jesus ascended into heaven. But no, it was an illusion that God set up. It wasn't real. This is the real thing. So the people in that 600 time gap, did they go to heaven because it wasn't real? Like, and so it's the same type of flaws that I see. That's all. I'm sounding like a Christian apologist now. I'm sorry, everyone. I didn't mean for the interview to become this, but
No, it's fine.
I am an apologist, I suppose. I will always defend my Lord and Savior, just as you will probably always defend now your newfound faith in Judaism. It's just that the book itself is not influenced by Jews. It's Pharisaic. Even David admits this in my documentary, Your Friend. Which guys, for those watching, David and Luke here are acquainted.
Yes. So the Talmud is very Pharisaic. So
it is. It's not Jewish. So that to me is unusual. Why follow it? The Bible is completely Jewish. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah. So Pharisaic Judaism was the only form of Judaism that perpetuated itself. Now, that doesn't mean it's true. That doesn't mean that it's divine, but it is the only form of Judaism, with a very minor exception, that's perpetuated itself over the past 2,000 years. But virtually all Jewish movements of the last 2,000 years are Pharisaic in origin.
Which it bothers me, because it means that the original Judaism has been ignored, and the current Judaism is not real. I'm sorry to say that, but what I mean it's been continued on by individuals who actively hated Christ.
Right.
That's what I mean.
So if you believe in Jesus Christ, then Judaism, modern Judaism, is obviously a false religion. And
well, the Torah is cool. Like people could still be Jewish with the Torah and the Tanakh. I don't know why the Talmud is required.
Because
and there are Jews like that too. I mean, they're a tiny minority, but they exist.
Yeah, the only form of organized Jewish life that continued over the past 2,000 years is the form of Jewish life that is intellectually organized by the Talmud, which springs from Pharisaic Judaism. So there are 2,000 years ago, there were many forms of Judaism. There were the Sadducees, There were the Pharisees,
True.
there were
You're
the
right.
Essenes, there were all these many different approaches, but they all pretty much died out in the first century after Jesus, except for Pharisaic Judaism. That was the
Yeah,
only type of Judaism that kept working, kept going.
but that Judaism is anti-Christ because they wanted him dead.
Right. Well, it'd have to be anti-Christ, because if it wasn't anti-Christ, they would become Christian.
But
Right.
you don't have
They
to
couldn't
be
be
a Christian
indifferent.
to hate. Yeah.
You know, they couldn't be indifferent, because Christianity became the religion of the Roman Empire in 325. So Christianity is rapidly gaining in power and influence in the first few centuries of the Common Era. And so
Good.
Jews were never, right. So Jews were not going to be indifferent to this. So obviously they were either going to convert and accept Jesus, or they were going to be hostile to Jesus. You couldn't
Which
be
some were.
indifferent. Right. Right. Some
Okay.
converted, but most were probably had some hostility, because when you have a dominant religion, and a religion that's becoming more powerful every year, and your position in life is becoming more precarious every year, you're very likely to have hostility towards the dominant religion, because that's the only way you perpetuate your own identity.
That's true. And my only issue with growing religions is when they get too big for their boots, and then they start getting dictatorial and they start forcing their agenda onto the masses. I don't like that. And I think Christianity, and this is where I get defensive of Christianity, but this is where my loophole is. I'm not Catholic, but I think Catholicism, so this is my loophole, because I don't think Protestants did this. I could be wrong, and you guys can correct me. I don't care being corrected, but that's what Catholicism started doing to the Jewish people. And I, as someone who was half Spanish, I'm completely aware that the Spanish kicked them out, and that then they had to, you either had the conversos, which means the converted who became Catholic, or the ones who left, or the crypto Jews who pretended like that they were Catholic, but then actually still praised did their own faith behind closed doors. And so I don't like that. I don't like that the Catholics did that in the name of God, because that's sort of like a blaspheme. But again, I'm not a Catholic, but I don't think Protestants did that. But yeah.
And what type of Protestant are you?
Well, I say to most people who ask me this question that I'm non-denominational, because I don't know what category I'm in. But I will say that here in Melbourne, I go to a Baptist church. But when I'm in New South Wales, I go to a Pentecostal church. So it's a little confusing. But ultimately, I'm a Christian who's a Bible believer, and then that's that. Like, I don't know. But yeah, I guess I would say Baptist if you really wanted a category, but non-denominational is usually my answer.
Yeah, my dad was, unlike his mild-mannered son, my dad was quite a controversial figure. So he got removed from the Seventh-day Adventist Church ministry in 1980, and so he formed his own evangelical non-denominational Christian foundation called Good News Unlimited. So that he
wow.
Yeah, preach the gospel to the whole world.
How was your family? How was your family when you rejected your faith and you chose Judaism?
It was a very bitter pill, but after all the embarrassing things that I did after that, it came to be seen as nothing, because then,
because of your sex addiction.
Yeah. So compared to that, the Judaism was nothing. It was like so embarrassing.
That's funny.
Sorry. I had this one girlfriend who, when I broke up with her, she wrote a letter to my parents, just giving all the dirt about me, and it was just devastating. My parents thought I was just like treating girls like lemons, just like squeezing them and then throwing them away.
Let me ask you a very specific question about your life with women. It's a very general question, but very specific. Did you ever borrow money from them and never give it back?
Never.
Good.
Never.
I that's great to hear, because that's not been my life history with men. But I'm glad to hear that you didn't stoop to that. Well done. Congratulations.
Yeah, no, I've never borrowed anything from people without returning it in the same condition.
Because you're a man of even in all of your philandering, you're still a man of character, at least with that particular conviction.
Yeah. There was this one time, like I was fairly new in LA, and I'd had this very intense relationship with this woman, and she finally like called it off. She finally, got rid of me. Like all her friends said, get rid of him. Her parents said, get rid of him. Her therapist said, get rid of him. And so she finally came to her senses and she got rid of me. And I was in a bit of an awkward spot because I'd been staying with her, and now I needed to sleep in my car. And then my car broke down. And so I had to, put the car in the shop. And so I borrowed $500 from her to repair my car. And I was supposed to stay with a friend, but he wasn't there. So I knew she had a date. So I came over to her apartment, like she was like on the 3rd floor. So I was like waiting outside at like 2 a.m. And I waited till her light went out. And then I like rang her buzzer and said, I was supposed to stay with a friend, but he's not there. Could I sleep on the couch? She wasn't very happy about that, but she did.
But she let you.
Yeah, and I did return the money like 6 weeks later. So that was
wow.
pretty embarrassing.
So it was one of your low moments.
yeah, that was one of my low moments. I remember listening to something on public radio about some bloke, and he was told when he was young that you're doomed to live off women for the rest of your life. And I thought, oh God, that's me.
No, but you're like, nah, I paid her back in 6 weeks. Nah, I'm good.
Yeah, I had another Sheila. She was interviewed, and she said that she always dated broke writers. She was a pornographer, but she always dated broke writers.
Was she Jewish?
She was not Jewish.
Okay, sorry. That was a rude jump. That was a rude stretch. Never mind. Keep going.
So she was interviewed, and she said, "Yeah, all these blokes, they always take it badly when I pay for everything." And then she added, "Yeah, but for Luke, it didn't bother Luke for some reason."
Why didn't it bother you?
Because I thought like my writing was such a gift to the world that if she was fine with paying for our dinners out, like she paid for everything we did out. Like I didn't ask her to. It was just it was important to her, and then if it was important to her, I was fine with it.
It was fine with you. Yeah. No, I get that logic. That's fair enough.
But the number 2 Sheila I was with, she told me like 20 years later, every bloke she was with after me was worse. Like after me, it was like nothing but ex-felons.
Do you know what I think it is? I think that the Christian consciousness was still imprinted in you. And so even though you were bad for you, because you know yourself and you were probably low for you, you were still not that bad compared to everyone else. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Like definitely, some parts of my Seventh-day Adventist, upbringing were retained.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I never saw my father. My father was a preacher. I never saw him do anything unethical. I never saw him do anything dodgy with
we
money.
have very different fathers.
But you got a hot-blooded Latino father, I assume.
Yeah, my dad is this one from Spain, and when I say like he does, like what I mean simply is just that like for example, when my brother was really little, my dad used to like trick him all the time. So my brother would have like a $2 coin and a 50-cent coin, and then my dad would take the $2 coin and be like, this one's little, you don't want this one, this 50-cent one is big, you get to have more of these. And he gives him more 50 cents and he takes my brother's like gold coins away. Like little things like that. My dad like has always been a little tricky like that. He's always been a little bit of a sneaky little bastard.
Was he a player with the ladies?
Before he met my mother, I assume so. My mother was very much because my family was Catholic. You could assume that correctly, being that I'm Latin. But so I'm not obviously Catholic, as you just heard. I'm not that now. But the family was at the beginning. We were all Catholic. With and what was your question again? Sorry, about.
Oh, was your dad a player?
So my father definitely was a player. So prior to meeting my mother, I think he sowed his seed in many places, but we don't know. We don't have an exact number of like that he's been with. But my father, if you look at photos of him, very handsome man, very handsome, had a 6-pack. I kind of looked more like my father than my mother, so kind of just imagine me with, you know, being looking masculine. So yeah, that's my that's my dad. But when he met my mother is and everyone says it, everyone who meets her, even the racists who I once was acquainted with who have met her say, wow, she's truly good woman. Like she's a little Colombian woman, very noble, very moral. He was her first and only, and yeah, so she's just without coming off like I admire her so much, she's just utterly pure. She's just utterly good. Like most people say that.
I noticed with my Sheilas, pretty much all of them had a father who was a sex addict. So it kind of made sense that they would hook up with me, who was a sex addict, that we just would find each other, because somehow I would remind them of their dads, and they'd try to fix the damage that their dads had done to them by, you know, taking another sex addict and reforming him. And
oh wow.
It was just uncanny how I look back, and it wasn't, generally speaking, you know, women with coming from intact homes. Like I was only going to bed with women who was equally screwed up as I was, just in different ways. But we were all at, you know, equal levels of dysfunction. You know, they were all haunted by having a father who, you know, back in the old days, they'd have a garage full of pornography, or they had a father who was, you know, promiscuous, or, you know, they had a father who was, after the parents divorced, you know, the father is just like banging all these Amazon blondes, you know, in the next room, in those thin Manhattan apartments where, you know, hell is growing up listening to your dad, you know, just go through a series of, you know, Amazon blondes. And so
what does that mean? Amazon blondes. What does that mean?
So Amazon, an Amazonian woman means, you know, big and tall.
From Brazil?
Yeah.
Oh, you just mean, okay.
Yeah.
No worries. So, I get it.
Yeah, I had a Jewish girlfriend, and one day she walked in on her mom, and her mom was in bed with a friend. Like, you know, my girlfriend then was like 5, you know, she walked in on her mom in bed with another bloke. So her parents were swingers, and then they divorced. And so
yeah, that ain't good.
You know, that really screwed her up. I mean, it gave her a great deal of, you know, hatred and contempt for men. And so, yeah, it was just kind of uncanny how these damaged women would tune in to damage me. And then we would temporarily solve each other's wounds and then drive each other crazy.
Hey, how did you meet? Because obviously for my documentary, I interviewed 5 people. How did you meet? How did you become friendly with Duvid?
Oh, so I've been doing pretty much daily shows on YouTube since February of 2018. And I think around April of 2018, Duvid was commenting in the chat. And so I thought, you know, I was just bringing in, back then I'd just bring on everyone. Now with time,
I'm pretty welcoming like that.
Yeah, but with time, I've come to see how dysfunctional and antisocial most people are who are drawn to racist movements. I just realized that marginalized movements attract marginalized people. So
admire those things?
I don't know you well enough, and even if I did have an opinion, I wouldn't state it in an interview. It would not be conducive to the interview. But I mean, I think you've experienced the very same thing, that marginalized movements tend to attract marginalized antisocial people.
Yeah, I would agree, and basement dwellers and all that kind of stuff, which is why I go out of my way to be as social as I can and hang out with girlfriends and friends and work and not just be online all day. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, I mean, the levels of social dysfunction, they're infinite. Like when you think that you've seen the worst, you know, then there are just new manifestations. And like particularly with blokes on the alt-right, you see that.
But Duvid isn't alt-right.
I'm sorry?
Duvid isn't technically alt-right. He was just in that movement to sort of counter-argue their points. But sorry, keep going.
Yeah. Duvid is not alt-right. I mean, yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. But sorry, continue your observation.
Yeah, I was just struck by the highly dysfunctional nature of the overwhelming majority of people attracted to ethno-nationalism or the alt-right. It's just been depressing, and I've just had to become so much more selective. The problem is that the most compelling people that you can talk to tend to be the most dysfunctional and antisocial, because responsible people are careful in the words that they choose. They're careful in the things that they say. They think about the consequences. Compelling people, blurt whatever the first thought is in their head, which makes them incredibly compelling to watch, but they're also so incredibly self-destructive, toxic, antisocial, dysfunctional, that I much more reluctant to have them on my show.
A lot of that is accurate in terms of psychological observation. It sounds to me like a lot of that is accurate. It's either because you know how to read people well, or because you've had enough experience that you've learned that.
Yeah, I mean, many of these guys don't even want to hold a job. They'll find some Sheila that they'll latch onto, so that she supports them, or they get, welfare, they get the dole or something, and then they spend all day being thought leaders on the internet, phoning into various podcasts. It's
I'm saying you're so right. You're so right. I just want to give the caveat here. A lot of You're right about what you're saying. At least on the Australian far right, that's completely accurate. I'm not familiar enough with the American far right to critique them, and I wouldn't be. And they've been okay with me so far, so I'm not going to be too harsh on them. But I will say that a lot of those people are basement dwellers, and that they have a reason to be upset as well. I think it is completely accurate that Sudan is homogenous, Japan is homogenous, China is homogenous, Israel is homogenous, but they're being overrun by other cultures that just don't mesh. And so I understand the white nationalist argument, and I will never oppose that particular point. But so many of them don't work. So many of them live on Telegram or Gab or whatever, and some of them don't even work, and they are on the dole. And I'm only referring to the Australian far right that I'm aware of. However, in saying that, I'm sure they exist in America, because you'd be observing that, and so if you're noting that, it must be also true for many of the American far right too. And it is upsetting, but I've added that caveat there. So if anyone is watching and you're angry at me for saying, oh, well, the American far right, I've given you the caveat. But yeah,
I'm thinking about this.
Completely agree.
One guy that I had on my show fairly regularly, and I liked having him on because he'd have a big Nazi flag in the background. It was like,
okay.
It was very compelling visually.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it clearly didn't even offend you. You're like, it was very compelling visually, and I didn't mind having him on.
Yeah, I loved it. And the guy was always drunk. Like at 9 a.m, he'd sit there, drinking a 40-ounce beer, with a Nazi flag behind him. And how did he get to live this life? Well, one time when he was drunk, he decided to hang upside down from a fence, and then he fell and he did permanent damage to himself. So now he's on disability for the rest of his life. So that enables him to be drunk all the time and to be a Nazi and to have that lifestyle paid for.
Yeah, see, and that's the problem. The problem is that everyone is waiting for someone, right? Like even the QAnon people, like they're waiting for JFK to come back, right? Like all of these people are waiting for someone to be their leader. It's like, no, stop waiting and just do something about it. If you believe what you believe, and you believe that, the Jews are responsible for this, or that the Chinese are responsible for that, or that the government has done this, then you get off your bum and you do something about what you perceive to be the reality that you see. Like I make videos, I go to rallies, I help different Australian politicians with different things behind the scenes. Like I made a documentary recently about race, and I saw things from the white nationalist perspective. I also saw things from the perspective of the minorities. Like I'm doing things. I'm trying to get off my ass. What are you guys doing? Come on, don't just wait there and don't just be behind a computer screen. I totally get it.
Yeah, but the problem is they're not capable, because you see that they're
some
antisocial.
might be. Yeah,
some, but you see how antisocial they are, and that they can't they can't maintain relationships. They can't maintain friendships. They can't work together with anybody because they just blow things up, not out of choice, just out of their overwhelming dysfunction.
How sad is that?
Oh, it's very sad, but it also means that I want to really keep my distance because I don't want someone on my show who then goes out and does something horrible.
Yeah, and I'm actually a little bit afraid of that. I've had several different individuals come on my show, but particularly in this documentary, I don't want to one day hear, oh, Dia Beltran interviewed this person and this has occurred at a cinema and 5 people are dead or whatever. Like, I don't know, but like that would be horrible.
Yeah.
I would hate that. Yeah. I would hate that.
What if they go to some live stream you did with some bloke and out of everything you say to him, they pull like 3 sentences you say to him that are positive.
Exactly.
And then they say, Dia Beltran said, the following, superlatives about this bloke who then went out and committed something heinous.
Exactly. It happened to Milo Yiannopoulos. He did so many. He was the shit for the longest time. He was the it person. And then they pulled out a couple of sentences that he stated on, what was it, pederasty and pedophilia. Mm-hmm. And now, like, he's been relegated to Telegram and he's got like less than 17,000 followers. Like, and he was so great and he was something worth admiring. I admired him. So yeah, I would absolutely hate for that to happen because I talk a lot to a lot of different people and sometimes I say silly things and sometimes I might give someone a little bit of praise and that praise doesn't mean I agree with everything that human being says. And that whole cancel culture today is just utterly just goes too far. But it just is what it is now. Like, how do you come back from stuff like that? You just keep going.
So why then do you risk it with some of these more dangerous characters that you appear together with, publicly on, live stream or documentary or whatever?
Because I don't want to have to walk on eggshells to please a majority. And that majority is a nonsensical majority today. Usually one can say that the consensus is right. Well, usually one could say that. But today, consensus dictates that a 9-month abortion is fine. Today, consensus dictates that white nationalism is the same thing as white supremacy. That's not correct. Today, they say that today the white straight male is persecuted and perceived as an enemy by virtue of his skin color. And so by that notion alone, I don't want, in part, I do want to be careful at some level. It's required that I be cautious at some level, but on another level, it's like, well, yeah, I'll interview these people. And this is why I did the video essay the way I did it. I did it as a balanced discussion. So if someone wants to say that I've done something wrong and something bad happens in the future, then I can say, yeah, I interviewed them that many years ago and it was on this topic. It wasn't on their private life. Like, there's always a way that one could justify themselves. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm not committing acts of danger, and I never would. I mean, not intentionally.
How much do you care about your own well-being?
That's a strange question. I obviously care about it. I don't want to get like stabbed.
Well, you forget anything physical happening to you. We are all judged by the people that we hang out with, particularly publicly.
I've been on my Instagram. I've been showing photos almost every day of different friends I'm hanging out with. And they're just nice and average normal girls. And one of them has been on my channel several times and she's happy to be seen with me. So are you implying that what are you implying about me?
I wasn't implying anything. I was asking you because most people would say that to have any connection with some of the characters, and I don't care. Like, I'm not connected.
Well, you're interviewing me right now.
Right,
you risk being seen with someone who is falsely labelled as far right and a dissident to Australia. but you're still interviewing me. So how is that different from me interviewing Gypsy Crusader or someone like Reviler?
Oh, because I see a big difference between you and Gypsy Crusader and Reviler. You're not pulling out guns. You're not throwing around the N word. You're not talking about mass genocide and how that's necessary.
And others will come to that same conclusion. And so being seen with me isn't actually dangerous, despite what the Guardian article said about me.
Right. It doesn't matter to me who you have on your show. I was just curious about how you thought it through, because very few people would have the courage to talk publicly with the people you talk to, or the people I've spoken to.
For sure, you're right. A friend of mine who has been on, he's relatively controversial at some degree because the ADL have, for whatever reason, even though he's married to a Jewish woman, the ADL have claimed he's a bad person. His name is James Fox Higgins. He's been on Patriotic Weekly with Mark Collette. He's been a friend of mine and a supporter of mine for the longest time. He recently said something to me. I can't remember if he wrote it publicly or if he wrote it to me privately, but essentially what he said was that I'm extremely courageous for doing what I do. And I was thinking in my head, I wasn't trying to be courageous. Like, I think it's just a brand of stupid that has really worked for me. But you've also now just said courageous. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that wording being associated with me, but I do what I do because it's important. No one else is talking about race. No one else is doing it. So I might as well try. And with my ability, I have an ability to talk to all different types of people. I don't know where it comes from. Thank you, Lord. But I get along with everyone. I always have. I always have found something to get along with someone. Even people who don't like me, I always find a conversation. And I think this documentary can only do good. But yeah, I don't know where it comes from. It's probably heaven sent. Who knows?
And what made Gypsy Crusader such a compelling character for you?
Oh, look, he's interesting because he is a gypsy, like that's his heritage. But despite being a gypsy, he goes against his own people. Have you ever heard of Jesse Lee Peterson?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Jesse Lee Peterson goes against his own, and so this is why he's not popular among many African Americans. Gypsy does the same. He's like, well, gypsies aren't very smart. Gypsies think that, Adolf incarcerated them. I highly doubt that. He goes, history's written by the victors. I think what actually happened was that it was Russian soldiers and that they were being shoved in gulags. Like, he said that in the documentary. If you watched it, you'll know that he said that. I find that interesting. I find it interesting when people kind of go against their own, and that they have their own opinions and they have their own, they go against the formulated narrative. I like that. I kind of do the same. Like, I don't get why Latinos are jumping the fence in America to be there illegally. It's like, my family didn't do it that way. You shouldn't do it that way either. I sort of am against my own collective as well in that respect. And so I found that I respected that from him. And I find it entertaining the way he goes about spreading his particular message, which is dressing up as a character and then just insulting people. Like, I don't like that he insults people. I don't like people hurting other people's feelings intentionally. But if I sat here to you and spoke to you and said that I've never laughed, I would be lying. Like, sometimes when people are mean to other people, you can't help but smirk a little bit. And he has showmanship. He's entertaining. And so I wanted to interview him for those reasons, because there was he was sort of the it flavor, and he will be the it flavor for a while. People tend to burn out. They always do. But right now, like, his popularity has only grown because of of the style in which he has undertaken his message. I hope that answers your question. Sorry, it's a little long.
No, that was great. So you mentioned earlier you'd had various blokes borrow money and not pay it back. Question.
No, I didn't say various. I said didn't say various. Okay. That was all one person. But yeah, keep going.
Oh, okay. I'm just curious. Are you attracted to bad boys?
I feel like I possibly am. Yeah. and I'm keeping my distance from anyone on the dissident right that doesn't do any good for me on a personal level, on a professional level, or anything like that. But yeah, like yeah, I guess I am. I think unfortunately I am. Yeah.
Because every girl that I've ever dated has enjoyed reading books. So none of them are stupid. You know, they've all enjoyed reading books. They're all articulate, but some of them loved reading books.
What about this book?
Just a second. I didn't hold it up again.
So it was the Bible. It was the Bible. It was the Bible.
Yeah. Some of them loved reading the Bible. So
okay.
Some of them, though, they loved books about serial killers.
Oh, okay.
Do you have a true crime fascination?
No, not really. Like, I can watch those shows. Like, if I'm on like YouTube or Netflix, I can watch those shows and be really fascinated by it. But it's not something that holds me. Like, every time I've traveled overseas and I'm at the airport and I'm reading a book, the book is usually a autobiography of a sad situation. Like, there's a book that I read called A Child Called It.
Yeah.
Just, do you know it?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I read that. I read the continuation, the sequel. And then I read the brothers' version of the same book. And then I also read this woman named Constance Briscoe, and it was just called Ugly. And then the second book was called Beyond Ugly. And these are just stories of people who've had these horrible childhoods and life stories and had these horrible parents that were evil towards them, but then they've overcome that adversity. So those are usually the types of books that I read.
Yeah, well, that kind of makes sense with your curiosity about many of these bad boys on the distant right as well, because
maybe look at you. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Because my father was a very controversial theologian, and so I grew up with a father who was kind of cleaving the community in half. Like, half the community thought he was sent by the devil, and so I grew up, naturally taking my father's side and seeing him as, persecuted for his heretical beliefs. And so I instinctively have a sympathy with heretics. Like that's why I enjoy talking to dissidents, because they emotionally remind me of my father. Yeah. They emotionally remind me of my father. And so that's why I do what I do, because I grew up the son of a dissident. I knew what it was like to have the community reviling my father and saying that he was being sent by the devil. And
that's so retarded, but fair enough.
So when I hear the modern secular version of the devil, that these various dissident right intellectuals like a Richard Spencer or a Kevin MacDonald or a David Duke, that these are essentially of the devil according to our reigning elites, gives me a great deal of sympathy for these dissident intellectuals, because I come from a dissident intellectual background.
I don't think those guys are of the devil. I certainly think that once they hit a level of status that makes them well known to a certain community, they all at some level start to get too big for their boots, and like people become entitled. I don't like that.
And have you had people in your real life try to pull you back from this edgy online persona that you've developed?
Oh yeah, of course. You lose. See how my wall here is full of friends. A lot of them are not in my life anymore. A lot of these people behind me.
Yeah.
This blonde girl she's still a friend.
Yeah.
She's still my friend. But a lot of them have sort of fallen by the wayside, and only because they haven't even spoken to me. Like, I don't know what it is that made them stop talking to me. But overall, I think it's because when you enter into the political realm at some level, you're going to lose friends. And then like I talk to it's really funny too that I'm associated with people on the far right, because most of my friends are not far right. Like I'm associated with, I've had so many people on my channel who are like, what's his name? Ross Cameron, who was on Sky News for many years. Daisy Cousins, Jacinta Price, Aboriginal activist. I've been associated with Mark Latham. I've been associated with so many more mainstream conservatives, but people don't focus on those people that I am friendly with, that I've had on my channel, that I've been in, we've been on videos together, we've been at events together. People only focus on, the one or two people that I've interviewed that automatically associates me with the far right. But also, I'm the only one doing it. I'm the only person being neutral enough, being impartial enough to allow leftists on my show, rabbis on my show, homosexuals on my show, far right dissidents on my show. I'm the only one really doing that. So like when Joe Rogan does it, it's okay. When I do it, I get labeled. It's really quite frustrating. But yeah, sorry, I didn't know what your question was because I went on a tangent there.
Yeah, it's fine.
Did that answer it?
Yeah, feel free to go on any tangent.
Well, anyway, now you know that the fact that I have an ability to understand a perspective doesn't mean that I agree with it in its entirety. It simply means that I see where they're coming from. If a white nationalist says to me that, I'm afraid of being replaced, I understand. White people are 10.13% of the overall population. Chinese people are not a minority. They like black people are not a minority. They might be a minority in a white country, but the fact that white people are 10% of the population of 7.5 billion, that's a really little statistic. Like I can see why race preservation is a conversation at the moment. That doesn't make me a white nationalist, but me saying that out loud could make me, according to the leftist media, could make me far right. But I'm not. I just happen to understand that perspective and I get it. I like your cricket bat.
Thanks. Yeah, it gives me energy.
Yeah.
So I had an acquaintance, Jim Goad. He went to Australia and he said Australians are the most racist people in the world, but their media is like the most politically correct in the world. That there is a big discrepancy between the bluntness and honesty of your average Aussie and the political correctness of the news media.
What do you think about what I said about white people being 10%? Because your heart is with Judaism now, but you are a white man. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think it's normal, natural, and healthy for any person to care about the preservation of his people. I would expect every normal person to put his own people first. And I don't expect people who care deeply about their own people to care very much about outgroups. So I just think that's the way human nature works. So just as the Japanese have an overwhelmingly Japanese nation state, why should not other peoples be entitled to the same? I don't think, for example, it's absolutely necessary that every race on Earth, every people on Earth should be allowed to live, every single other place on Earth. Like,
agreed.
I would expect people to love their own people, and I think there's something wrong with you if you don't love your people.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a completely fair statement. Mm-hmm.
So, the theory of white nationalism makes sense to me, but in practice, what I notice is that people rarely care that much about being white. They care about being Australian. They care about being English. They care about being American. They care about being Canadian or French.
That makes more sense.
And so, French nationalism, Canadian nationalism, Australian nationalism seems to be much more real. So white nationalism is much more of a theory, but it doesn't it's not popular. So
no, but you're right. Like, what is white? Is white all of Europe? Because there's varying complexions. But if you say Australian nationalism, that makes sense. If you say Canadian nationalism, that makes sense. But to say white, Irish and Slavics are technically white, but then they're rejected by some as well. So it's like, I see your point, and that's a completely fair statement.
Right, and there are indeterminate boundaries for families as well. Like when you got mixed families, like is your
I'm mixed. I'm half Spanish, half Colombian. I'm half European, half not.
Right, so these things are complicated, but even mixed families in terms of divorce and remarriage. So let's say your dad's on his third marriage, and he's just got married and he's got like 4 stepkids now. Are you going to feel like these are your true brothers and sisters? No, you're not going to feel the same way as people who are genetically your brother and sister who you grew up with. So just because
That's not true. Have you not seen the Brady Bunch? Just kidding. Keep going.
So just because there's fuzziness with family boundaries doesn't mean that family is not real. And just because there's fuzziness with national and racial boundaries doesn't mean that race and nation is not real as well. But Australian
Completely
nationalism,
true. We're agreeing.
yeah, I mean, Australian nationalism is a form of white nationalism because Australia was developed and created by primarily Anglos, and
Brits.
then extended to some other Europeans. But Australia was created by Anglos. Its institutions are Anglo. Its founders are Anglo. The most important people
Correct.
in Australian history are dominantly Anglo. Same with the
Your
United
surname
States.
is Ford.
Exactly.
So you're like, did your ancestors come in the first fleet? Are you that Aussie? Or are you like a couple of generations after the first fleet?
Yeah, I think a couple of generations. So I had one ancestor, Michael Dyer, who was an Irish rebel, and he escaped from British. So Michael Dyer was a United Irishman in the 1798 rebellion. He fought a guerrilla campaign against the British, and he twice escaped from British jails, and then he was finally sent to Australia in 1806.
1806. Wow. Yeah. So you're still pretty Aussie.
Oh yeah, but I'm also 1/16 Chinese. So my great
Fair enough.
grandfather was Chinese, and he was a bit of an opium dealer in Townsville.
Oh, in Townsville.
Yeah. So you were raised Roman Catholic. How did you become evangelical?
Okay, so I technically wasn't raised Catholic, but when I say that I was Catholic, I simply mean that my mother and my father converted during our infancy. So I was maybe 4 or 5 years old when my family finally left Catholicism. So my mother tells me the story. My father was living in Australia and he was attending this little church. And they are, I don't know if the audience really knows this, but there's a sect of Christianity known as the Brethren Church. And the Brethrens are really strict. And that's what I came from. I was raised in the Brethren Church. So they, you have to always have a Sunday hat on. You have to wear your Sunday best. You can't wear makeup. If you wear pants, you are technically sinning because you were dressed like a male. That level of strictness, but lovely people, but that level of a bit overboard Christianity. So that's the church we were going to whilst my mother was still fighting for her Catholicism. So so my mum and dad went to church. I think I do have godparents. I think they are my auntie and uncle in Spain, all that kind of stuff. And my mother was battling really hard. Like she was, I only know this story now. So whilst I was 4 and 5, we were attending this Brethren church, learning the gospel, but not the specifics on Mary, not the specifics on confessional and all that kind of stuff, which bothered my mother because she was raising it. She was like, no, but my kids need to be raised like me. But we were going to that church because they were being nice and they were great people. Eventually, when I was 7, my mother was baptized. And so I'm assuming that by that point, she had finally left Catholicism in her brain because my mother realized whilst going to this Brethren church that the Catholics don't really read from the Bible. They focus more on the catechism. And as they are focusing on the catechism, a lot of what they say is not biblical. I don't need to go to a dude behind a wall and say to him, forgive me, Father, for I have sinned, because he's a dude. He's a human being just like me. He sins just like I sin. So to go to him to ask me for forgiveness makes no sense. And eventually my mother came to that realization as well. It also didn't make sense to my mother, but she says that she realized at 14, 15 that this was weird. She stopped. So she did this on her own without the help of the Brethren Church, but she stopped praying to Mary to then go to God. She went directly to God, because the Catholic Church teaches you that you need an intercessor, and that the intercessor, Mary or one of the saints, then tells God everything. That's dumb. Just go directly to God. Just pray to Jesus or pray to God and say, dear God, please this. Please God help me, or dear God, thank you. You don't need to go, oh, hey Mary, can you please tell God this? it just made no sense. And so yeah, so we stopped being Catholic because my mother and father. So I technically was always raised as a Christian, always, but we were technically Catholic by name, by birth certificate. But my mother and father left the Catholic faith and became. My father is not anything. He's a deist at best, Deist, for those who don't know. But so I've always been raised in the Protestant church, and my mother was Catholic for many years until she became baptized. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's great. So, are there any books on Christianity that have particularly influenced you?
Maybe I think it's called Pilgrim's Progress.
Yes,
that was a really great book. Otherwise, there's a woman who my mother. You know how like your bedtime stories as a kid are usually like fairy tales and stuff like that.
yes.
Our bedtime stories were biblical stories or the Holocaust stories. So when I was a kid, there's a woman who, for many people don't know her name, but if you watch my documentary, I mentioned her, Corrie ten Boom.
Yes.
And she was.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. So she was a young or old lady, but she came out of the concentration camps, having lost her sister, Betsy. And so she was a Christian woman who was incarcerated for I think being a Christian and being a political prisoner, for helping people. Anyway, so those books, Pilgrim's Progress and Corrie ten Boom's books were great because they really showed what it is to be a person of faith, a person who can forgive. And what it is to really be a Christian. And I fail. I fail every day. I'm not a great Christian. I know I'm not. I think somehow there's an impression of me out there that people think that I think I'm good. People think that I think I'm the best. I'm not. I don't know where that comes from. I don't know where this pontificating, judgmental persona of me comes out. And if that is because I've presented myself that way by accident in videos, it hasn't been my intention. And so, yeah, I'm not a great Christian, and I'll never say that I am.
Now, the SS would often send their soldiers to church on Sunday because they wanted it to look like they were good Christians. But generally in racial nationalist movements, they tend to be dominated by atheists. Now, some of them may talk a little bit about Christianity, but it doesn't seem to be more than a centimeter deep. What's your experience?
My take on that?
Yeah.
Gypsy Crusader is he claims to be a Catholic. I believe him when he says he loves God. I can't judge someone's personal relationship with Christ, but I agree that. Well, I don't completely agree. A lot of white nationalists are pagan. They've gone back to the pagan past, and so a lot of white nationalists are not Christian or Catholic either. They are pagan or atheistic. That's probably true. Yeah. So that's I think, yeah, that's all I can really say on that. I can't elaborate more because I don't know. But a lot of them claim to be Christian and they're not. If they were truly Christian, they wouldn't be vengeful. They wouldn't be manipulating me or whoever they can get their hands on. A true Christian would act with character and with a sound biblical foundation. And it doesn't matter how much people are mean to me. I always forgive them. But these people, a lot of them act in a vengeful manner and want to keep hurting me or whoever they can because they get bored and it's just fun to like hurt someone. That's not Christian behavior, and that's not even sometimes atheists behave better than the alleged Christians in the white nationalist movement. So but I'm only talking from personal experiences. I'm not wanting anyone who is watching this to be like, well, she's bashing all of the British white nationalists and all of the Australian white nationalists and all of the American white nationalists. I'm not, but there is a huge problem in these white nationalist movements of assholes claiming to be Christians, and they're not. They are only that in name, but they turn around and start doxing people, or they turn around and start manipulating people, or like engaging in hookup culture. These are not Christian things.
And
But yeah.
what about drug and alcohol abuse? How prevalent is that in nationalists that you've known?
I've been in the room in a recording studio with people who are doing cocaine and then go live. So it's pretty prevalent. And have had alcohol.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you've also you've lost some racist friends. So you've both lost real life friends and you've lost racist friends. So you've paid a pretty big toll for.
Yeah, it has. It's paid a toll in my personal life, which I don't like. But if those people were not willing to stay during a low moment in my life where I was figuring things out, then I don't mind having lost those people. I still have friends in my life. Like I people can see, if people go on my Instagram page and like they'll see like that my social life is extremely active. But the friends that I thought I'd always have, they're married, they have kids, they've moved on. That is sad to have lost them. But I've gained friends where people didn't expect either. Like, have you ever heard of a YouTuber named Bearing?
No.
Oh, he's a cartoon bear. And he's like one of Australia's most successful YouTubers. Bearing, bear, the bear, and then ing. He's a friend of mine. Like I can that's the only one I'll name out loud. But like my point is that where I lost in some places, I can substitute in other places. And it's not about the fact that he's a huge YouTuber or anything like that. That wasn't my point. My point is that where I lost some, I gained some great people as well. Like in Sydney, where I want to move once this next lockdown and the borders reopen. I'm going to move closer towards other friends that I have. So yeah, I've lost friends in my personal life, but I'm still seeing a bucket load of them. And people who follow me on Instagram will see that I'm still friends with many of my childhood friends, and that's great. But the racist friends that I lost, it's just like flies. They were flies, they were in the way, and now they're gone. You know, like a fly gets annoying. Like they try and come back, they still mention me. I don't mention them publicly. You've brought it up, so I'll respond to you, but I'm not going to mention their names. They're just flies. That's fine. And maybe in a couple of weeks' time, someone will send me a message on Telegram or on Twitter and be like, oh, look, they mentioned the fact that you called them flies. And I'll be like, okay. You know what I mean? I don't care. I don't want those people in my life. I'm glad that they hate me, and I'm glad that they're away from me. Because if they started to like me again, or if they wanted to get back in again, that would be the problem. Letting them back in would be an issue. And I'm forgiving enough to allow it. But I'm trying to be harder now. So I'm not going to allow anyone in those circles back into my life. And then I've been more successful ever since too. My reputation and success is far better now and greater now. So they did me a favor. Thank you guys.
How important is getting married and having kids to you?
That's prime. I don't want to talk about it too much, but that's prime. That's a huge priority. Huge.
Yeah. And yeah. How similar is Dia Beltran to your online persona to your everyday self?
Oh, that's exactly the same. I can't play a character. The fact, what you see, all the stupid questions that I ask people, all the things that I laugh at, all my ability to be able to talk to so many different types of people, that's just me. Like the day my cat died, I stupidly posted about, like my sister was telling me yesterday, I can't believe you posted that live when your cat died. I'm like, yeah, I did. I said, well, I don't know why I did that. But I think what I wanted in the moment that my cat died was just to reach out to whoever I had that was still my friend and be like, oh, my cat died. And I was really sad. And I made that live for some reason the moment she died. But and I won't do that again. Like if like a family member of mine dies, I'm not going to do that. That's so stupid. But my point is that what was your question? Why did I mention that?
How close is dear Beltran to your everyday self?
Yeah. Yeah. So the reason I did that was because I wanted people to know what was happening in real time, and to that was a real moment, and everyone saw it. And so Dia is pretty. Dia and Claudia are the same person. Like I just separate the two online. That's all. I think you just got a reward or something from one of your watchers.
I think I gave them a reward.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
It's fine. So your real self was pretty brash and outspoken.
Yeah, I've always been. I have something called foot and mouth syndrome. I'm an unfiltered individual, so I always say the wrong thing. Now I just get to do it publicly, and I can, and people can rip me apart more for it. But yeah, look, I have my 2 cents, and if people are not seeing logic, if people think 9-month abortions are okay, if people think it's okay to remove Australia Day, people think it's okay to do half of the things that we now consider normal. If saying hello sir is now offensive, I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to be a voice, and if people happen to follow me and like what I'm saying and the common sense biblical morals that I espouse, then good, follow me. I'm happy for you to come on board, but just know that I'm not always going to do it the right way, and that I make mistakes along the way, and I am who I am.
Are there any particular media personalities that you've been affected by?
You mean in the political scene?
No, it could be on telly, on the radio, on YouTube.
Well, okay, this will sound so like so 90s, so 2000s. But when Jessica Simpson went out as a virgin and didn't, like I was like, that's amazing. Jessica Simpson is a virgin and she doesn't want to have sex until she's married. That always, like, and I don't like her music. I have nothing to do with her music, but just that one act alone, I always found really, really special. And so I always carried that same moral with me. I mean, I was raised with that morality anyway, but when someone famous does it, you feel like, okay, now it's like I can affirm that and then and pretty much I was the same as her in that regard.
Have you encountered significant opposition, people who've tried to redirect your online direction?
Yes, but only for the better, because the people in my life right now all said, stay away from these individuals, my sister included, some of the people on the wall behind me, my mother, stay away from these people. They've gotten you in trouble already, stay away from them. But as being the idiot that I am and being overly forgiving like I am, I kept letting them back in. And so, yes, the people behind the scenes were redirecting me, but for the better, not for the worse. Those people who I kept letting back in were redirecting my online life for the worse. And they kept trying to say, change this and change this and change this and do this. And I'm like, why are they doing this? I don't do this to them. And so, yeah, but now, as I said, I have more success now than without them. And so they've only really helped me without realizing it. They've only helped me. All of the things that they've done to me or tried to do to me, and all the things that they've publicly maybe said about me, which I've never spoken about them in a negative way publicly. And even if I have, it's probably something very light, probably not something particularly harsh. People see your character. People see who's the truth tellers, and those who side with people who lie and stuff. That just speaks volumes about their character. I've been quite surprised by the people who have privately messaged me and said, "Don't worry, we know that they're lying," and that, yeah, and yeah. As you can tell, I'm being very cryptic with what I'm saying. But if you want to know off camera, I'll tell you. But like, I'm not going to get into it on camera. But my only point is that the people who were a problem for me, who are no longer in my life, there's no more drama. Like, no one hears drama about me, and people put one and two together, and they go, "Oh, you know, there's no drama surrounding her anymore. It was obviously this and it was obviously that. And yeah, time is great, and wisdom is great, and hindsight is great. And yeah.
So belonging to a community and having freedom, these are kind of opposite forces.
My community is Christian.
Well, even in the Christian community, if it's a stamp club or a cricket club or a church, the more closely you belong to a community, the less freedom you have. So how have you navigated? True. How have you navigated? Because I'm sure you appreciate community, as do I. So I purposefully give up quite a deal of community for a considerable amount of freedom, and I also give up some freedom for a considerable amount of community. So I've kind of deliberately steered a middle road between community and freedom. How about you? How have you steered that road?
I see what you're saying. I'm not really part of any community. I'm a Christian, but as I said to you, I live between two states oftentimes, and so I sort of go back and forth between these two different churches. And yeah, I don't really have a particular community. And then people will say, "Oh, yeah, but you have you have this part of the political spectrum that you're a part of." I'm like, no. I'm not on the left. I'm not a centrist. I'm not on the right. Certainly, if you want to put a label on me, yeah, I lean right, of course. But I would rather not identify with the spectrum at large. Yeah, there's no real community that I'm a part of, but I certainly will say that if I had to belong to any community, it would be the Christian community, and that's pretty much it. So I have all the freedoms that I want in that regards. So yeah, I can't really give you a good answer there, because that's just where I sit.
Yep, got it. How do you get your information? Do you get it primarily from books, from newspapers, from YouTube videos? How do you get your information?
People send me links all the time. So someone will send me something that Ben Shapiro said, someone will send me something that some lefty said, someone will send me all these different things. And then if I'm interested enough in the things that they're sending me, I then will actively go out of my way to find more information on it. And I don't use Google, I use DuckDuckGo. And that's how I get my information. And then also I have a Telegram group, which I don't really let anyone into. It's not supposed to be a public group. So in this little Telegram group, I will say to people, does anyone have information on this? And then I'll get opposing, like I'll get other links from these people. And then I'm like, okay, cool. So then I'll have this sort of really rounded opinion on all this stuff. Say the election fraud. You get all this information saying there's no fraud, there's no fraud, there's no fraud, there's no fraud, there's no fraud. That is the mainstream narrative. Then you get the sort of underground narrative that no one will discuss, and then you have like more information, and then you can make a more educated video on it, because then you have all of the different elements that you need to sort of educate others.
Okay. And what's the attitude towards women that you notice in the Australian nationalists that you've hung out with?
Oh, yeah, chauvinists, sexists. Like, it's fine that you believe that in gender roles, because I do too. It's fine that you believe women belong in the kitchen, because that for so many thousands of years has been the understanding. There's nothing wrong with that either. But a woman who wants to speak on politics the way I do doesn't mean she wants to be in office. So when people say stuff like, oh, she should just this and that, it's like, well, I'm only having an opinion. You don't have to watch my channel is voluntary. You don't have to click on it. You don't even have to comment. So it's like, if it really bothers you, just stop watching my content, please. Yeah, so yeah, there's very few people on the far right that I've noticed that actually genuinely respect women. James Fox Higgins, the way he talks about his wife is fantastic. The way he respects and loves her is really, really good. The way Mark Collette seems to revere his wife. So it does exist, but most of them have a very ridiculous attitude. I think it's fine for women to work and to have their own bank account. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, so there is a lot of unnecessary sexist behavior that me saying that will automatically, people will say, oh, she's a lefty. No, I'm not a lefty, but I'm also not. I also think it's okay for women to have a voice.
Yeah. And what were the most interesting things that you learned in the course of doing your documentary on race?
Oh, well, I became angry doing that because when I was collecting information, collecting videos in particular, there were hardly any videos of white crime. It was black crime is higher. And I wanted to be convinced out of that. I didn't want that to be, but it is what it is. Black crime rates are higher in Africa, and even the 13% that represented in it's just true. And so that's something that I learned. And I knew it was true beforehand, but then just doing the research I did for my documentary just affirmed that. But then I was like, that doesn't have to mean that black people are biologically savages. Is that what people believe? And I had to sort of really think on it, pray on it, have conversations on it, because I was angry. And I actually feel like crying right now talking about it, and I don't want to cry. I was angry because I don't want to hate a portion of the human race. I don't want to. I don't think that's conducive. I don't think that's productive. I don't think that's good. And so when I really thought about it, and then I spoke to my friend in the documentary who happens to also be black, I said, why is it that black people this and that? And then if you watch my whole documentary, I won't give it away here, but at the end, I do basically say that, yes, it's true. There is more black crime, but that is because, and my conclusion is based on a biblical foundation. My conclusion ends with the fact that white society had the foundation of Christianity, and it's a consciousness that infiltrates and permeates the human consciousness. And so for that reason and that reason alone, I think lots of Africans in Africa, they'll chop someone's head off and they'll do it's like getting a bucket of water. It's like the same equivalent to them, and it's because it's been normalized for them. Like Ted Bundy, the serial killer, said that slowly, the more you watch pornography, the more it removes your humanity. And that's the best way to describe the African crime rate and why it's just normal for them. And so if they had more Christ, they wouldn't be committing. They would have more of a consciousness for their fellow human beings, but they don't. They're not there yet. And so that was how I spoke. I intellectualized my way out of hating a group of people, because I started to and I didn't want to. But yeah, everyone should watch my documentary. It's on BitChute. I'm assuming you'll add the links below, or however it works.
Yep, I'll link to it. Did you start I assume you started with a YouTube channel. Did you get that idea on your own, or did anyone tell you, hey, you should start a YouTube channel?
No, I got that idea on my own, because I used to work selling handbags, and I liked my life. It was great. I had a great social circle of friends. I was traveling all the time. It was great. I had a great little life. I really didn't, there was nothing wrong with my life. I was just bored. Now, what I do, I really feel like I'm fulfilling my heart's desires, like I'm making a difference in the world, and it's cost me a lot, but why do I keep doing it if it's costing me a lot? I can't get back all those friends. I keep doing it because it's important. I do what I do for a reason. And yeah, so I have something to say, and I think God has put it on my heart, and so I'm doing it. I'm talking about the topics that no one else will talk about, and I'm happy to do it.
So were you always comfortable with public speaking?
I don't know. I don't think so. But I've never done public speaking. Doing a video is quite different. I've done one speech one time, and I spoke about Marxism and how it's infiltrated its way in Australia, and I did that for the Liberal Democrats in Sydney. But that's the only time I've been asked to do a public speech.
And now that you're a public personality, what are the upsides and what are the downsides of people critiquing everything about you that you put out there?
The upsides? You learn about what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong, and where you can have improvement. I don't mind being critiqued. I'm critiqued all the time by my family. I'm critiqued all the time by the people around me. The downside is that some people get so comfortable giving you feedback that they're rude in their approach, and they're like, oh, hey, Dia, by the way, this was really lazy. This was lazy research, and this was bad because the audio here was really shit and blah, blah. And I'm like, you're just critiquing me because you like to critique. Whereas I'm not going to listen to you anymore because that's all you do. And it's annoying. But yeah, those are the upsides and the downsides, is that you get to realize what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong. And it's good to know that stuff so that you don't repeat those mistakes and you can make your videos more professional.
And which of your videos, aside from the one on race, would you most want people to check out?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know, but my videos on the election fraud are doing pretty well. One of them got over 1,000 views. I have another video on my channel, and it's with Gypsy Crusader. The thing is, though, I often put it on private. I private that video a lot. It's on 22,000 views currently. The reason I private it a lot is because I don't know what YouTube's going to do. I don't know if I'll always have this YouTube channel. So it's important for me to make sure that I'm protecting myself as much as I can and hold on to the 6,000. Right now, my subs is 666. How fun is that? So 6,660. Yeah, that's my subs right now at this second. So I'd love to get up to 10,000. But right now, those are my subs, which is kind of funny. But yeah, so when I unprivate that video again, which I just do at my discretion, people can watch my video with him. But I think the most important videos I do are the ones where like you asked me about female gender roles before and stuff like that. Like there's a video on my channel called Attention Women. That video is pretty good, and it talks about the gender roles, and it talks about women and having babies, and yeah, so that's a pretty good video, so maybe people should watch that one.
Okay, great. Anything that I should ask you that I have forgotten to ask you?
No, I think we've had a great conversation. I really appreciated you pushing it forwards. I wasn't feeling too hot this morning, and you seemed okay with pushing it forwards a bit, so thank you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I always intended to do the interview, but no, we spoke about Judaism, and I challenged you on that, and you challenged me on why I associate with the far right. I think we've had a very good discussion. It hasn't, I think because I get along with everyone I speak to for the most part, people don't think that I challenge. It's like, no, we've been challenging each other throughout this whole entire exchange, only we've just done it really nicely.
Yeah. So you're all over the internet. If people just put your name in, they can find your YouTube channel, Dia Beltran. They go to your BitChute. And then are you on Twitter? You're on Telegram?
I'm on Twitter. I'm on Telegram. If you go to the bottom of any one of my solo videos where I talk in front of the camera, there are all my links. The bottom of all those videos where I just talk to the camera, not my interviews, but just where I talk to the camera. There is like my Telegram, my BitChute, my Facebook, like Twitter, it's all there. At the moment, my favorite thing is Instagram. I'm using that a lot because I'm not doing my live shows at the moment. I'm not doing anything consistent on my channel right now because I am in the holiday period. So I'll come back and start my regular activity on YouTube soon, but right now it's not there. So right now I'm happy to be invited on other people's shows and encourage everyone to watch my documentary and learn something, because it really, yes, it's long, but it really is a great conversation. And I'm not mean to anyone. It's what I say is true, at least from my own perspective. And you guys will like it. You will. Everyone has. That's me. That's my doco.
Okay, right. Very good. Good to talk to you, Dia. Take care, and talk to you later.
Bye guys. Thanks for having me.